The deal of the century. That's a From Peace to Prosperity plan, or so it's called. It claims to be the solution to the Palestinian crisis or Israel-Palestine conflict. But apart from its proprietors, the Trump administration, its beneficiary, Israel, and both their allies, the world at large has at best condemned the deal and at worst simply laughed it off. Iran has a solution to it, but why a world is involved in the issue of occupied Palestine is a matter to ponder on. Named Israel, the territory aspires to Greater Israel, stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates. At a glance, it would look like, what's the fuss? How much are the Arabs giving up anyway? But looking closer, the Euphrates joins with the Persian Gulf. Now imagine how much of the Middle East or West Asia a Zionist regime expansion would engulf. Aye, the Palestine crisis is a concern for all, how it began and where it's heading. Here on Iran Today, come experience Palestine with me, Leila Faramarzi. Although the plight of Palestine is as fresh and real as it was over 70 years ago with the advent of Israel, it's a tale oft told. So let's begin with solutions proposed today, and in experimenting their workability, let's work our way backwards through Palestinian lives and their land. In the brief words of my interviewees, of course. Mr. Parkain, a former diplomat, unmasks the deal. What's the main problem with the proposed deal of the century?
This
plan apparently aims to recognize two states, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. But the fact is that when we look into the very substance of this plan, we see nothing but the destruction of Palestine and cementing the status of Israel as a regime.
No wonder the Palestinian party to the deal wasn't even invited to the negotiating table. The deal, also known as Trump's peace plan, is actually a means to coerce the Palestinians into giving up their livelihood as a sovereign nation, to officially sign off Palestine as a Jewish state. This would entail controlling the Palestinian population and allowing back no Palestinian refugee. And Quds or Jerusalem would officially become the Israeli capital.
This plan contains several points. First, if this plan takes effect, the Palestinians are required to recognize the Israeli regime. Second, Gaza must be disarmed. In other words, Gazans and groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad would be stripped of their defense power. Third, all Palestinians are required to recognize a Jewish state in Israel.
Mr. Parkain's dismissal of the deal is a declaration of Iran's stance to what was authored by President Trump's advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Now, with what confidence does Iran dismiss the deal? It has a strong argument drawing on international law, as the deal overlooks the right of Palestinians to determine their own destiny. And that is a basic human right for any nation. Mr. Momenirad, professor of law, elaborates. You're talking of breaching the UN Charter of Human Rights. Can you please point to the exact articles or paragraphs?
Article 1 of the UN Charter highlights the right to self-determination. Article 55 of this charter also refers to the principle of equal rights and self-determination of people. Furthermore, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights also stipulate that nations are entitled to self-determination. Now the deal of the century is in conflict with the international documents I just mentioned.
Iran has been aware from the beginning of Israel's method in usurping Palestinian lands. And after the Islamic Revolution, Iran, led by Imam Khomeini, officially declared its full support for Palestine and its territorial integrity, and the formation of a single Muslim country in that region. It also declared its non-recognition of the Israeli regime. Mr. Shakibai goes as far as saying Palestine is not a concern only of Iranians. Why does Iran insist on supporting Palestine?
The issue of Palestine is not supported by only the Islamic Republic of Iran. For us, Iranians, the issue of Palestine is significant, mainly because of religious aspects. But for the Europeans, it's a humanitarian issue. Or for Arab and Muslim nations, it pertains to national interests. So despite our concerns for Palestine for religious reasons, Iran is not the only supporter of Palestine.
But why has Iran supported the oppressed Palestinian people despite cultural and racial differences? Because due to its Islamic revolutionary nature, the Iranian government purports to support liberation movements in breaking free from global arrogance and in achieving their rightful independence like Iran. Not to forget, the Greater Israel aspiration joins the Euphrates to the Persian Gulf, engulfing also Shusha in the southwest of Iran. In a speech last January, General Soleimani pointed out that we do not help Palestine because of an issue, but our support for the Palestinian people is due to fulfilling a religious and revolutionary duty and confronting the Zionist regime.
Why is confronting Israel at the regional level a must? This regime has taken shape in a territory inhabited by its own people and is seeking the destruction of an entire society. It is not acceptable from a humanitarian standpoint. Currently, 13 million Palestinians live in that society. More than 7 million live abroad, and the remaining 6 million live inside Palestine. Nobody would accept the ignorance of their rights. The second issue is that the Israeli regime is an apartheid system. Many of the conducts of the Israeli regime are worse than those of the former South African apartheid regime. Under the apartheid regime in South Africa, at least children were not detained, whereas Israel has arrested 6-year-old children. Even now, nearly 400 children are imprisoned in Israeli jails.
What do the people have to say on Palestine and Iran's support of it? I popped out to get an idea.
We feel compelled to support anyone subject to injustice, be it in Palestine or anywhere else.
Reasonably speaking, I think that anywhere there is injustice which is likely to harm my own nation too, there must be action.
The nation of Palestine is oppressed. We Iranians have to support the oppressed.
We have to support Palestine in order to safeguard our own honor, life, and property. But sometimes our own people may deserve more help than other nations. I think that the Palestinian officials and people should also be blamed for the problems they are faced with. They are not united and they don't choose competent leaders.
The third issue is that Israel constitutes a threat. An Israeli historian has recently said that Jews lived in Medina, and therefore we have to control Hejaz, in addition to the area extending from the Nile to the Euphrates. Such ideology does not threaten the Palestinian security only, it affects the entire region.
When was the Trump deal released? The economic portion of the plan was released on June the 22nd, 2019, titled Peace to Prosperity. The political portion in late January 2020. On November the 1st, 2019, Iran made a statement of its long-proposed national referendum in the territory of Palestine. That is to provide the grounds for the people of Palestine to exercise their right to self-determination. The proposed referendum has recently been registered in the UN, although it once just sounded like wishful thinking.
I believe that the plan presented by the Islamic Republic of Iran is a progressive one. It takes into consideration all aspects and is in compliance with international law. This plan respects the provisions of Articles 1 and 55 of the UN Charter and the two conventions I noted.
The implementation of this plan, the referendum, includes 4 main phases. Enforcing the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their historical homeland, holding a national referendum among the people of Palestine, including the followers of all religions who inhabited Palestine before the issuance of the Balfour Declaration, for the self-determination and determination of the political system. establishing the political system determined by the majority of the people of Palestine, deciding on the status of the non-indigenous residents of Palestine by the political system elected by the majority. What do you think of Iran's proposed referendum? Why would anyone take it seriously?
Palestinians may choose to vote for an Israeli state. That would be all right. At least international norms would be respected. People would choose the desired political establishment in free and fair elections. A future political establishment would deal with the issue of refugees. Even if an Israeli state is elected by people, every other country should recognize it. What am I driving at is that a referendum and election would be acceptable to everyone in the world, even Palestinians themselves.
Authorities in Iran have addressed the issue of Palestine time and again. Going by the site Khamenei.ir, the present leader of the revolution delivered nearly 42 lectures on the solution to the Palestinian issue. In them, he has offered resistance and perseverance as a solution for the Palestinians themselves and for the international community, non-intervention of the USA and public referendum by genuine Palestinians, including Jews, Christians and Muslims. It's doubtful the US would be happy to see its plan pushed out by Iran's Palestinian referendum. Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. The British Empire is long gone, but now an American power is heir to holding up Israel, no less than ever before, whilst at the same time claiming to be seeking a solution to Palestinians' problems. Its proposed deal of the century, however, was not greatly believed. So what's the next step to be? That's to be seen. In a post-World War II world meant to run by international humanitarian norms, diplomacy is the first course of action. But that's to get results. So should diplomacy be disregarded, Iran's proposal would go beyond words. As early as 2014, following Israel's brutal invasion of the West Bank, the leadership said in a speech, "We believe that the West Bank should be armed like Gaza, and that those who are interested in Palestinian destiny should work to alleviate the suffering in the light of their powerful hand and the weakness of the Zionist enemy."
How did Palestine take its current form? After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, several territories were to gain independence. They were born out of the division of the Ottoman Empire. Jordan, Syria, Lebanon and Iraq became independent nations. Palestine was also to become an independent state, as it met all international law requirements for a nation. It had population, territory and sovereignty. The UN assigned sovereignty over this region to Britain. The British government had to proclaim Palestine as an independent state. But unfortunately, the British betrayed the Palestinians and some UN officials endorsed it. Then this region was divided into Palestine and a Jewish zone. Due to the low Jewish population, the Balfour Declaration and Zionist protocols illegitimately and illegally proclaimed this area as a Jewish Israeli state.
The IRGC prepared a statement saying, "We are prepared to play the necessary part in the region's new situation." It called on all Islamic states and particularly their armed forces to make a big decision and stand against the conspiracy of the deal of the century. Now, with the possibility of the US forcibly annexing that part to Israel, the issue of arming the West Bank has again come to attention. The importance of arming Gaza. What sort of attention has the matter of Palestine and the deal of the century been receiving from the world media? For that, I'll give you Sharza to review reputable agencies' top headlines. But I must say in the meantime, a lot of mainstream media outlets that were more than happy to turn a blind eye to the massacre of Palestinians over the years have now been critical of this deal.
Hi, I'm Sharza Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on the so-called deal of the century.
reactions and rejections. Tasnim news agency reports, deal of a century, not even deal of a moment, says Iranian diplomat. Iran's ambassador to France, Bahram Qasemi, ridiculed U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called deal of the century plan on Palestine and said that the deal cannot even be called the deal of a moment or a second. The world and the human history have seen many of such inept lunatics and such null deals, the ambassador added. The diplomat, who was formerly an Iranian foreign ministry spokesman, further emphasized that at the end, the Palestinian nation will emerge victorious. The Tehran Times claims deal of the century does not enjoy international support. Sabah Zanganeh, former Iran's representative at the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has said that the so-called United States peace plan for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, titled Deal of the Century, does not enjoy international support. In an interview with IRNA, Zanganeh described the deal of the century as dangerous, which can throw international equations into disarray. Expressing concern over the consequences of the plan, he said, apparently this plan is supposed to boost economy in the region. However, in fact, it will cause challenges to regional economy. In an article by Mehr News, we see the deal of the century unfold as Trump's means to occupy the Middle East, says Erdogan. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking occupation of the Middle East region through the so-called deal of the century. Erdogan railed against Trump's highly controversial roadmap for Israeli-Palestinian conflict while addressing Pakistan's parliament. The Turkish leader noted that Ankara gave the biggest reaction to Trump's initiative, which was quickly rejected by the Palestinians and widely dismissed throughout the Muslim world as skewed in favor of Israeli regime. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
One of the major disadvantages of Trump's plan is the disappearance of the Palestinians' right of return, which is in complete conflict with Iran's proposal to resolve the Palestinian conflict by holding a referendum in Palestine.
فلسطینی‌ها تقریباً تو 4 تا موضوع سر مسائل خودشون با صهیونیست‌ها مشکل دارن.
The Palestinians are divided with Zionists over 4 issues. One issue is the fate of Quds. Palestinians believe that their territory extends from the Mediterranean to Jordan Valley, with Holy al-Quds as its capital. The Palestinians will not back down even 1 iota from their demand. The second issue is the return of Palestinian refugees. Currently, 6 million Palestinian refugees are living outside their land. The third issue is sovereignty. According to the plan the Israelis have drafted for President Trump, Palestine has no borders and therefore is not independent. Palestine would have no regular army, police force, international airport or international port, and it has to do whatever it wants through Israel. Under the deal of the century, the future state of Palestine will not be enjoying the minimum rights granted to the Kurdistan regional government in Iraq.
The disadvantages of Trump's proposal are plentiful. The proposal is so unilaterally designed for the benefit of Israel that it is difficult to find an analyst anywhere, east or west, with a positive view of the plan. Donald Trump's empty economic offers to win the favor of Palestinians and the world ring hollow. Earlier, we weighed his offer against international law and UN resolutions, but there's room for more. Here's some reactions by Iranian authorities.
زورگویان و سرگردن بگیران آمریکایی از یک طرحی اخیراً رونمایی کردن، اسمش هم گذاشتن معامله قرن. خودشون رو دلخوش میکنن به اینکه یه اسم بزرگی براش بگذارن، شاید بگیره، شاید بشه. به نظر بنده این کاری که اینا انجام دادن و دنبالش هستن اولا احمقانه است، ثانیاً نشانه خباثت است، ثالثاً از همین الان شروع کار به ضرر خودشونه. احمقانه است چرا؟ چون این طرح قطعاً به نتیجه نمیرسه. این طرح قبل از مردن ترامپ این طرح میمیره. اما آمریکایی ها با این کار نشون دادن چقدر خبیث و چقدر دغل‌کارن. چرا؟ برای خاطر اینکه اونها آمدن با یه طرف دیگری که همون صهیونیست‌ها هستند معامله کردن. موضوع معامله یه چیزیست که متعلق به اونا نیست. مال فلسطینی‌ها رو با هم دیگه معامله کرد. یکی داده یکی گرفته. این خباثت نیست، این دغل‌کاری نیست.
President Rouhani called it the most despicable plan of the century, and Foreign Minister Zarif called the so-called vision for peace a highway to hell, and nothing more than the dream project of a bankruptcy-ridden real estate developer. He was referring to Trump. Zarif, however, also called it a wake-up call for all the Muslims who have been barking up the wrong tree. Here's some reactions by Western countries allied to the US. Even they found the deal too lopsided to approve. Top European Union diplomat Joseph Borrell said the bloc would study and assess the US proposals, while Germany's foreign minister said only a negotiated two-state solution acceptable to both sides would work. France insisted on a two-state solution, but in conformity with international law and internationally agreed parameters, and said it would carefully study Trump's plan. As for the UN, it supports two states living in peace and security within recognized borders, based on the pre-1967 borders and on the basis of United Nations resolutions, international law, and bilateral agreements. Perhaps it's down to the seriousness of human rights violations that the main premise is lost in argument, the argument of who's doing worse to who. The premise is, what are Zionists doing in occupied territories in the first place? Having answered that question, we can move on to how to alleviate the Palestinian problem. Now, this book, Not to Forget by Al-Khalidi, is one of the documents proving that the Zionists have no business being in occupied territories and that the Palestinians are not to blame for their own problem. They didn't actually sell their lands to the Zionists.
ببینید جالبه که بدونیم اینکه یک پروفسور آمریکایی به نام آقای
It may be interesting to know that Professor Khalidi from the University of Chicago, former US President Barack Obama was one of his students, has written a book about the history of Palestine. According to this book, there were 675 villages in Palestine, but they have all now vanished. He has established 40 groups to interview each and every resident of these villages, and then their words have been written down in several volumes of this book. This book shows that no Jew lived in those villages. Israel razed all those villages to the ground in order to reshape the area. Then new villages bearing new names were created in occupied Palestine.
We've spoken of resolution upon resolution in favor of Palestinians, so to speak. So how on earth is the US charging on to trample and wipe out Palestinians as a sovereign nation? Given the United Nations' passive stance in confronting the United States makes it appear more than ever that the UN is in fact just a ceremonial body to cater to the United States. All said, how does the future look for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict during Trump's administration? Paths foreseen by the United States Institute for Peace are that we can expect 1. Militarily weaker players to increasingly acquire greater capabilities with dire consequences, and 2. The prospect of a single or even a multi-front war, possibly together with Israel taking formalized steps towards annexation, or together with the release of a US plan that is perceived as one-sided. The mix could be explosive. Third and finally, we can expect the outbreak of a third intifada, from peaceful resistance to extreme violence, or any combination of the two. Mr. Shakibai says why the US is out to enforce its plan, although he believes it's as clear as daylight that Israel has drafted the plan.
This plan is not aimed at settling the issue of Palestine. Rather, it's aimed at resolving the problems the Israelis and the Americans are faced with in the region. The axis of resistance has reached the Palestinian borders, and this axis is about to intervene and bring an end to Israel after 70 years. To prevent this, the US has developed a fully pro-Israeli initiative for the region.
The deal of the century may have been nothing more than a diversion. Still, there's lots more to say on it and countless other topics, so do return to the box at the same times next week and each week after. And don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Thanks for watching and bye for now.